Okay, so we're going to start what is lesson 5. And if you remember last week, just as a brief summary, we are exploring this book with the understanding that there are 3 main characters. There is a Shulamite woman who has been taken into the palace of a king. She is being wooed by the king. The king has offered her a queenship. And there is a shepherd who she knew before she arrived in the palace. I believe that it's pretty clear in the 6th chapter that when she tells us that really she is there with no really responsibility for being there. She talks about how she went down to the garden to gather the nuts, to see the vendor of the valley, to see whether or not the vine had budded. That was her responsibility. That was her job. We've already seen her brother took her away from the pastures where she knew the shepherd, and they brought her into the vineyard where she would do the checking of the plants. And she says, before I was aware of my soul, my soul had made me one of the chariots of the noble people. She had been taken into the courts of the king. The king was trying to persuade her that everything he had to offer her was well worth her giving up her shepherd, the shepherd whom she loved. We've already seen him described as somebody who provided her security and love and the ability to have peace and comfort. Though it was not with the riches of a king, it certainly was actually what the king offered paled in comparison, really. And so we know that he will offer her in chapter 6. Just before that, he says there are 60 queens and there are 80 concubines and virgins without number. Remember, she's in a palace with thousands of young women who at his beck and call come to him in the evenings. And he either lays with them, and then they're concubines, never to leave again, but not receiving a queenship, or they're queens. And of course, as we know, he collects many of both throughout his lifetime. He tells her that there are 60 queens and 80 concubines and virgins without number, but my love, my perfect one is the only one. So he says, you're going to be my only one, really, even though I've already collected 140. And of course, he goes on to collect 1,000. So she understands that the promises the king is making is empty. She understands that the shepherd has already, in his love, shown her what true love looks like. And so this king is in a real predicament. I believe that it is very likely that Solomon never had another woman reject him. I actually am under the understanding and belief that Solomon had never experienced this, nor will he experience it again, and therefore he wrote a song. We get it. We listen to country music, and that's what country music is. It's songs about unrequited love and about lost opportunities and about not understanding certain people. And so we understand this predicament that this king is in. And he is fascinated that this young woman could love a shepherd greater than all the things that the world had to offer. And of course, that is exactly what we do. We love our shepherd, who nobody understands. He doesn't offer us great riches. He doesn't say, if you come to me, I will change your life and you will be honored among people. He doesn't do that. And so she was being offered some very wonderful things, and she chose to continue to think about her shepherd and all of the things and the memories of her past. We've also talked about the fact that a king in a palace could not keep her heart captive. He kept her captive. There's no question in our verses that she anticipates she'll have an opportunity to say no to him and to go back to the shepherd. But for now, he has her captive. She lives in the world. We talked last week about the parade and how the women of the palace said, look at him, he's wonderful. There's nobody as rich, there's nobody as powerful, and actually there's nobody as popular. And we talked about how appealing those fundamental offers are. And I have seen Christian young people and older people who give up the shepherd much quicker than than they should to chase the opportunities of the world. And so this book is something we totally understand. And what Solomon never really understood was how to love in a way that was this determined and devoted love that was both logical and illogical, as love can be. And so when we start chapter 4, we are going to take a look at this chapter, which really can be considered two praise poems. If you look at the text that you have that's colored, we go from the words of the king to the words of the shepherd, both of which are really songs of praises for our young woman. She almost seems to make a comparison in what the shepherd offers and what the shepherd says about her and what the king does. There's a great difference in the language of the two. There's a remarkable difference in the focus of what the king focuses on and what the shepherd focuses on. The king's is a very physical thing, which if you think about it, that is what his experience with women is. It is a very physical thing. They bring the most beautiful girls into the palace. He doesn't even have to get to know their names if he doesn't want to, and so that is what his admiration is. The shepherds, however, is something entirely different. And so we're going to look at these two praise poems tonight in chapter 4. So it begins with the voice of the king. Now, remember, we've just left him behind in the parade. This is a song. We've talked about that. These are not chronological events. We're not leaving the parade to hear the king talk. This is a song. So it is over the course of months or years that this king is wooing this young woman and trying to persuade her to stay. And we don't know how long they could keep a young woman in the palace before they sent her back, and she was not willing to even be a concubine. But my guess is, like I said, I would doubt that rarely ever happened. In fact, I've never seen any indication. Esther certainly didn't feel comfortable doing that. She stayed and became a queen. And so those are the things that we have to realize as we go through this text. And so the king we've seen his power, we've seen his glory, we've seen his riches, we've seen his majesty, we've seen his popularity, and now he speaks. In his admiration for her is, behold, you are fair, my love, behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn sheep, which have come up from the washing, every one of which bears twins, and none is barren among them. Your lips are like a strand of scarlet. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. He goes on to say, your neck is like the Tower of David, built for an armory, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. And so the king's praise of her is a physical song. It is about how she looks and what excitement she brings to him. I will say there's a couple of things, and I'm not going to go into detail about this, but in several of the books written about Song of Solomon that I liked the best, one by Lloyd Carr, another by Phillips, they both talk about how the language in these two different poems shifts, and how they're both masculine with a stanza in between, which we have noted is a feminine speaker. And this language here seems to encapsulate both of them. In other words, he seems to be speaking as in you and I are going to do this. And this beginning piece is just the king admiring this girl. And so there are sentiments that the king never seems to understand. We talked about how when the women of the palace praise him, there's no consideration of anybody but the king. It's all about him. And actually his lust for her was about him. So he starts by telling, what he sees in this young woman. So these two poems are about what these two men see in this young woman. And it's really the difference between lust and love and what true love does. And so we know the hearts by the words, and she does too. And so as she relays this, so the first thing that he admires about her is her eyes. There's no question. We see the attributes. She had mystery. Thou hast dove eyes within thy locks. Now, Rotherman, who is another one that I love to read, said, thine eyes are doves from behind the veil. We've already had eyes described as doves in this song. We've talked about how doves' eyes are sort of that iridescent, they almost glow. We know that the Hebrews loved eyes, and they talked about the eyes being the windows to the soul. So the natural act of modesty in this culture and in this day, and in many cultures around the world even today, this young woman would have worn some sort of veil or head covering, some sort of something that would hide some of her beauty. But he could see her eyes, and her eyes had not gone unnoticed. And she had flashing eyes that would entice with loveliness and mystery. Eyes that would hint of much more to be revealed behind the veil. There was a mystery about her, a mystery that our young women in today's society don't have any of. I mean, we show everything. I mean, there's nothing to be imagined anymore. And it is amazing to me. But there's nothing left to the imagination anymore. But certainly in this culture, and in many cultures even today, they put us to shame in that way. Nothing was left. So this king even had excitement thinking of the mystery and what else he might discover beyond the veil. And he begins with the eyes. Eyes have always been, like I said, described as the window of the soul, expression of a personality. They reflect love and hate. You know, you can tell by the way eyes look at people, whether they're expressing love or hate. They express fears, disappointment, and joy. Our eyes sing and dance our personalities, don't they? We can tell if somebody's excited or happy to see us or not happy to see it. And so we understand this. Again, like I said, the dove's eye, this time maybe perhaps not so much the color, but that they're perfectly round is one of the things that might be indicated here. They're a prominent feature of the face. And this gal had some eyes. That's all I got to say. She had some eyes. She had some eyes, and he liked them. So that's the first thing that he talks about. And then he talks about really the majesty of her hair. He describes it as a majestic thing. He talks about her hair is as a flock of goats that appeared on Mount Gilead. You know, some of these things that are discussed by the king seem really odd to us. And they don't seem as beautiful to us as what probably they meant. But if you've ever seen a flock of goats on the hilly mountainside and they move, you know, they're sort of wavy and they move, I think that is the discussion here. I remember when we were in Africa and we went to Lake Nakuru, and that's where the flamingos are. And it almost looked as if the sand in the seashore was moving as the flamingos moved together. And I picture that as her hair maybe was wavy, which might have been a wonderful attribute in those days. And Gilead apparently had these rolling hills and these green pastures. It was known for its beauty. And these animals would flock together, and her hair would move in such a way that it would gracefully adorn even her movements. And so hair is wonderful. I think hair is a fascination to men. I know very few men who do not love long hair. Most men love long hair because hair is an attribute that men see as attractive. And I think that's what the king here is talking about. She had hair that almost looked like those sheep as they moved down the mountain of Gilead. Her teeth were magnificent. He speaks of this. It appears that she had every single one of them. They were all paired up in the fashion that they should be. There were none missing. They were not barren in any way. They were newly washed and shorn. They were perfect. Probably not something at all that happened on a regular basis back then. You know, surely we understand this, the glory of a smile a beautiful smile. We are the most dentally fixated people in the world. And so I think that we probably all get this, that there is a great beauty to that. And it allows people to have wonderful smiles. And that is not true. If you've ever met somebody that is self-conscious of their teeth, it does impede, and it does limit them on how they feel they can express themselves. And so we understand this. This is not odd. You know, it may be odd the way he, you know, notices it, but all he's saying is, man, you have got you a mouthful of nice teeth. That's what he's saying. And that's attractive. It's wonderful. People notice that even today. And I feel sure there were probably, you know, plenty of girls that didn't have a smile to die for, but this one did. And so that is what he's expressing. And not only were her teeth wonderful and white and newly shorn and just there, man. And remember, we've already talked about her skin color, that the sun has made her this beautiful hue, that her teeth would show up even more. And not only that, but the mouth is examined as he extends his adoration from her teeth to her lips. They were like a thread of scarlet. And look at this, her speech was comely. Her speech even reflected the beauty of her mouth. Her mouth was lovely. That mouth there is the speech. She had a way with words. She had probably a tender and gentle spirit about her. And her mouth was lovely. It is our mouth that best shows tenderness and love. It is through our mouth that expressions of kindness are shown. Our mouths, both in the words and in our expressions, change somebody's day. They rearrange somebody's thoughts. They show compassion. They build up other people. They make people feel good about themselves. This young woman had a mouth that would remind one of a crimson cord that constantly had wonderful words to accompany it. And then he moves on to her modesty. And he talks about the fact that she blushes. And this is something that I think is extremely important. He speaks of the templates behind her veil being like a piece of pomegranate. And remember, pomegranate was widely used as a decorative part of garments. Remember, that's what the priest had upon the hems of their garments, a bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate. They were thought to be such extraordinary bits of fruit. In 1 Kings 7, the pillars were made, 2 rows of pomegranate above the network, all the covers of the capitals that were on top as David built. And so they were thought to be beautiful on the outside, blush red and smooth. And from what we can see of this young woman behind her veil, what he could see, she appeared to have this rosy redness in her templates as a pomegranate, something to look forward to. And can I say that I also think this intended to imply that this young woman knew how to blush, that she could appropriately react, the things that might be inappropriate. This king probably and does speak things that are inappropriate. In fact, later in the song, he becomes more ravenous of her. And I'm sure she blushed at that, something that I'm afraid we're also losing within our own society. The feelings that we can blush. We know in Jeremiah 6 and Jeremiah 8, Jeremiah actually addresses the fact that the nation of Judah has forgotten how to blush. They don't know what's embarrassing and what isn't embarrassing. If you don't believe that is happening to our society. I saw it with my own children, things Randy would talk about that I would have never even thought to discuss with my parents or my father particularly. I remember when a commercial would come on with my father that was just a feminine item, and I would have to get up and act like I needed an apple or popcorn or something because I couldn't sit and watch that with my father. And people talk about those things now on a daily basis as if it's natural conversation. And I find that appalling. But we need to understand that embarrassment is something that comes from an understanding and a conscience that is pure and that is right. And women in our world today should be mortified at some of the things that are worn, at some of the things that are seen, and some of the things that are discussed openly. It is a shame. And we have forgotten to know how to blush. And certainly this was an attribute that the Israelites would have admired. It would have been considered gracious and good. He admires her strength. He talks of her neck, her power and her strength. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built for an armory on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. And so he talks about this king sees, it appears, a neck that was fitted with a necklace. You know, perhaps she's got a string of coins like we talked about before. Do you remember when he's admired her as the fillies in Pharaoh's army? And he talks about, and everything he brags about her about were things that he had done for her. Oh, your sandals, your feet are beautiful with those sandals on them. You look great with those jewels I gave you. And so he's already admired his own handiwork. And here he seems to do a little bit of that. Shining in the sun, they would have looked like an array of shields hung on a smooth wall of armory, on her neck and on her head. And so gifts that would have been given to her by the king just would have reminded him of how beautiful the ornaments look upon her, and he would have been able to admire his handiwork. So upon this beautiful neck, she could have this these beautiful jewels, and her head would be, the picture up in the top is probably an Indian young woman. She looks like an Indian bride, probably, from the Indian weddings I've been to. And it is quite remarkable. I mean, they are quite beautiful. And when you see them in the daylight, I mean, they do shine. It's as if, you know, they're shining like Herod. And I always think of Herod in Acts 12th chapter when he comes out in his silver robe and then he ends up being eaten by worms. Anyway, but anyway, all right. And so lastly, he addresses her maturity. He talks about her shape. She is old enough that she has breasts. She is a woman. She has a figure. She is a woman. And you know what, guys, don't notice that. He sees her noble shape, carefully veiled behind these long tresses of hair, these flowing contours. He sees behind the veil, even behind the veil. She is mature and she is a grown woman. She no longer had young breasts, but they were part of this wonderful package. And I think it's not, I really actually don't even think that, I think that he's just saying, and you're a woman and it's time for you to get married and you're fully grown and you don't need to be with your mother and your brothers anymore. Full development takes time. It doesn't come all at once. It takes time to bring out the beauty of a flower, to grow a tree, to have fruit open. The same is true with our daughters. And so we watch our daughters as they mature into young women who are ready to marry. And part of that is a physical growth, isn't it? Their bodies become ready to accept marriage. And so I think that's what's being discussed here. It's a full-grown woman who this king desires. And he knows that because she has a beautiful shape to go along with that beautiful face and those great teeth and those wonderful eyes and that gorgeous hair. And she's just the whole package, isn't she? She's just something. And that's just the way that is. And he's taken note of her, as he has at this point 140 others. And he notices that, right? So he's got a little problem on his hand because she's going to turn her attention back. And so we find the next verses, I believe, are very much her. And she says, until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. And so she says, all right, you know, you got me here for this time, but I'm not going to always be here. You know, I'm still mourning the mountain that I came from. This is not going to be all the time thing. And I'm not always going to be here. And so it's a break in the text, signifies a new thought, a new speaker, new examination. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, her heart was occupied with a coming day. There is another day. There is another day that I'm looking forward to. I think this really is her hope. I think she's talking about hope here. What keeps you going in this world as the world parades before you? And as this empty world offers you things that others would, by the way, give all of their time and attention and energy to. An education and a certificate, you know, with their name on it, or some particular job, or some particular beauty treatment, or some particular this or that. What calls you away from that? What gives you a hope outside of that? You know, that's what this is talking about. She's there right now. Right now, she's in Solomon's court. She's held physically captive with gifts and words and pleasures that her shepherd could not afford, that he wasn't able to offer her. And Christ doesn't offer us what the world offers. He doesn't. It's not the same offer. It's better. But you know what? People that don't know our shepherd don't know that. You remember the women in the court? And they said, who is this guy? I mean, come on, really? He's offering you everything. You will never, ever have any desire for anything that's not at your beck and call, except love, true love. And she knew that. They didn't know it, but she knew it, right? And that is us. That is a Christian. He would not keep her there forever, nor could he harm her so long as her heart remained true to her beloved. One day the shadows would flee away and the bright and blessed day would dawn. That was her hope. And she knew where she would go then. When that day came, she would go to her beloved, and there would be not a mountain of myrrh any longer. She would no longer have to live in the mountain of myrrh, of sadness, of sorrow, of death, of illness. That's where we live, guys. Those of us from Cypress Grove know that. We have had a year of it. That's what we live in. And she's talking about that. No longer am I going to live in this world. There is a hope for me beyond this world. That is what's being discussed here. I'm not going to go to the mountain of myrrh then and to the hill of frankincense. That is not where I will be. I will be with my beloved shepherd in his field, in his flock, in his pasture. That's where I will be. A lot of people have tried to find this mountain, a mountain with myrrh and frankincense. They've looked and looked and looked for it. You can read about it. I don't think it exists. I think what she's saying is, I won't be there any longer. I don't have to escape to that mountain in my mind anymore. That's what we do, isn't it? When we become overcome with the sorrows of the world, where do we go? I'll tell you where I go. I go to heaven. I go to heaven. And not long after Fair died, I dreamed of heaven. And I dreamed that all the anxiety was gone and all the sadness. It was just this feeling. And I knew that I was there. And then I woke up. But that's where we go. And I think I had just thought about heaven being something with no anxiety and no sadness and no sorrow and no worry and no not understanding. No, not understanding. Can you imagine? You're going to know. You're going to understand. And everything is going to be right. And everything's going to be perfect. And everybody's going to be complete. And there's going to be love, total love surrounding all of us. And that's the way it will feel. And she knew where her love was. And she said, okay, you've got me here right now, but you are not going to keep me here. And I am not going to always be here. And so all the flattery and all the riches and all the comforts and all the promises and all the glory could not be better for her than the hope of a mountain to which she would flee, not of myrrh and frankincense, but one with her shepherd. And surely we think about when we sing, fly as a bird to your mountain. That's what we're going to do. Read those passages in Isaiah. You know what's going to happen to us? We're going to wait on the Lord, and he's going to mount us like on wings like eagles. We're going to run and not grow weary. We're going to be free from all of this. And she's dreaming of this. And immediately she begins to talk about him. And she turns her attention back to him. And now he's going to have a poem of praise. So we've heard the kings. He says, man, you have got the eyes, and man, do I love your hair, and you've got those teeth, and you've got those you've got a shape like nothing to behold, and I'm excited to get behind the veil. And that's what Solomon has said to her. And now, what does her shepherd say to her? What does Christ tell us when the world says to us, you can be great, you can get respect, you can have honor, you can, and even those of us among the congregations of the Lord's people, our pride can take over, and you can do this or you can do that. Shame on us, shame on me, shame on me. And so what does this shepherd tell her? You are all fair, my love. That all there, that apparently is a word. And like I said, I am not a Hebrew scholar. I did try to read people that understood the Hebrew that could give us some insight. It seems that he's talking about our union, our relationship is fair, that it is fair, that there's not a spot in you. Do you know what love does? Have you ever talked to somebody that's newly in love and they're just smitten? And you try to say something a little bit negative about the person that they're in love with. I mean, they can't see it. That's why we say love is blind. Let me tell you something. Love is blind. It's blind. I didn't know Russ had a flaw. I'm not saying he does, but that's the way love is. And we forgive, don't we, for those we love. We know it with our children. We know it with our parents and our brothers and our sisters. And we should know it among each other. You know, when I hear that somebody has said something, I don't immediately think, oh, that really did. I think, well, I'm sure I couldn't have meant that. I mean, you give for the ones you love, don't you? That's what we do. That's what love looks like. And that's what he says. There's not a spot in you. You think she didn't have a spot? She had a spot. She had a spot. She had some spot somewhere. Now, nobody seems to have noticed it so far, but she does. And so she hears again the shepherd calling her to come and join him. Come, because we are all fair. You are all fair. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse. With me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Mount Ammon, and from the top of Senir and Hermon, from the lion's den and the mountains of the leopards. And so he's calling her to come. He's called her once before. And we talked about how even Christ expects us to come to him. You know, this is not a one-way love affair that we have with Jesus. That's why we sing, oh, how we love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. There is a name I love to hear. All the love songs we sing. We'll talk about a few more today. I always try to bring out a different song every class because we sing love songs all the time that have these same sentiments that this song has. It is not a song that is gross or something that is impossible for us to understand. It is exactly who we are. It is that type of love. And so, once again, remember this discussion in the Hebrew word is that he's calling her to join. Once again, she is spotless in his eyes. The beloved sees the perfection that love always sees in a beloved. The characteristics of love, to see only good, is surely what our prayers to love our brethren better are. I've often said one of the prayers I try to pray every day is help me to love better. Help me to love better. If I understand Christ and how he's taught me to love, then it will help me to maneuver through all of the relationships of my life. Because my heart is only love. And I don't have animosity. And it's not about pride. It's not about me being right. It's not. And so he doesn't have that. Surely we must see here then in our search to understand this magnetic force that attracts one person to another, that we see the mystery and the wisdom of understanding our love, our true love in all our relationships. How does Christ find us? The ones that he loves. How does he find us? Well, Ephesians 5 tells us that he might present her, talking about us, the church, us, right? To himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. Do you think we are? We are not. Do you think he sees us that way? He does. That's the way he sees us. Because he loves us. And because we love him. And that's what's being said here. A beloved shepherd is not able to see what the heart will not allow. Christ will step forward to receive his church on his arm. It is his blood-bought, blood-washed church, his beloved church with no spot or wrinkle that he will receive. He will present his bride to an assembled host, the ones in glory. He will present us. Can you imagine? That's what's going to happen to us. We are going to present it to those that be presented by our groom to the ones that are in glory, those messengers around the throne. and every eye will be on us, the spotless bride. Come on. It's amazing. I think it's just beautiful. And wonder of wonders, we shall be fair as the morning, as bright as the day, as beautiful as the rainbow, as pure as the Arctic snow, most lovely, most pure, for we will be like him because he loves us so. And that is what is said. It's different than what the king says, isn't it? It's a little bit different than what the king has said. Verse 8, come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, and with me from Lebanon. Look at the top of Mount Ammon, the top of Hermon, from the dens lion, from the mountains of the leopard. So she's locked up, so to speak, in a gilded guarded palace, and her beloved once again asked her to come with him. And though she is caged, her spirit is free to once again explore her hopes and her dream. And he will speak two aspects of her present situation. It's interesting the way he talks to her here in this verse. Let me see if I've got, it's interesting what he talks about here. He speaks of two things. He urges her to plant her feet by faith on a higher plane in spite of her present restrictions. Come with me to this mountain. Plant your feet someplace higher than this certain situation that you are in. It is a plea to escape in body or in mind. Think of me in these heights, all these places away from Jerusalem. That is what we do. Our hope is planted. Our feet are planted someplace higher. You know, Russ preached the sermon not very long ago about how when we are told that we are in the heavens, it is a present tense. We are already there. We are dwelling there. We are living there. Our minds are there. We're already before the throne. We're not lugging through the quicksand down here without something above. Our minds are already there. Our hearts are already there. That's how we have joy in spite of sorrow. Because we already are living someplace better. I can walk in the ocean and say to my God, who knows the very depths of that ocean, you're with me. It's just like we're together. Now, I don't know what's on the bottom of that ocean, but he does. And that's the relationship that he's talking about here. He says, plant your feet someplace higher. It's a plea to escape. Lebanon means wilderness. It's a poetic name for a snow-clad majesty of mountains against the blue skyline of the Holy Land. Whether this is symbolic or physical, it doesn't matter. He wanted her to remember the places that are higher than where she is, someplace better, someplace where they thought, you know, the Jews thought that if they climbed up on a mountain, they were closer to God. That's why they put their altars in the high places. When we went to Israel, we went to Mount Hermon. I know I don't know this for sure, but I feel like I know this for sure. I think the Transfiguration was on Mount Hermon. It's the highest mountain. It's near Philippi. It's where he was. It's near Caesarea, up in Philippi. It's where he was. You know why? I feel like the Transfiguration was on that highest peak. And that's what this shepherd is saying. Remember, go higher, go higher, go higher than a king. Plant your feet someplace bigger and higher. That's what we should be doing. Amana means constancy, integrity, truth. It's a mountain that the river Abana flows through, one of the rivers that Naaman named is a better river than Jordan. It's a clean river. It's a wonderful river. It's pure. He speaks of Shinar or Mount Hermon, like I said, the highest, I believe, where the Transfiguration was. It means bear the lamp, bear the light. I think that's where the Transfiguration took place. And so that is the plea. Come out of the lion's den, he says. Get away from the leopards. There was danger where she was staying. Solomon and all of his cat grace surely was something to behold, and quite dangerous were she to stay there for very long. And so he's telling her, make your decision and come away. Get out of the situation you are in. Get out of the world. I'm going to tell you something. If we say that we are Christians, And we continue to be plagued with the world. And we continue to play with it. And I've known people that just play with the world. And they like to actually even boast sometimes about, well, I don't think it's sin to do this, or I don't think it's sin to do that. Well, that's fine. But I'm going to tell you something. You play with the world enough, and I'm going to tell you something. You'll be in it before you know it. It's not funny. It's not cool. I mean, I don't think. I've never been cool. But it's not funny and it's not cool to play with the world. I don't care what a sin is. I'm going to tell you that if you are walking in a way that's drawing you to God, that's what you're doing. You're not trying to figure out where you can go with this sin. You're drawing yourself towards God. That is two completely different ways to live your life. And he's telling her, you need to get out and away from those cats, because those cats will get you. He goes on, you have ravaged my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravished my heart with one look of your eyes, with one link of your necklace. How fair is your love, my sister, my spouse. How much better than wine is your love, and the scent of your perfumes than all spices. Your lips, O my spouse, drip as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. The beloved now speaks about the love that he knows that she has for him. You know, Christ is confident in us. You ever thought about that? He was confident in his apostles. He was confident. We see God's confidence in people all throughout the scriptures. You ever thought about that? That he's confident in you? I'd hate to disappoint him, wouldn't you? I'd hate to trash that confidence that he has for me. And I think that this young man is confident. He speaks and reminds her, after he reminds her about being in danger, if she fails to realize the den of lions that she's in, he now reminds her of how deeply she loves him. Isn't that something? How deeply she loves him. What better way to garrison a heart than to be reminded of who we truly love and what we truly love? He told his beloved that her love was beyond anything that he had ever known. It was love beyond compulsion and beyond comprehension and beyond comparison. He addresses her with purity and respect as his sister. That's not the way the king approached her. But he talks to her as if he's her sister. He reminds her of their commitment to marry one another. Perhaps betrothed at the point that she's taken into the palace. That's very likely that she already had been given in hand. One look from her eye, one turn from her neck. That's the link there. That's with one link of your necklace, one turn of her neck. He knows. He is reminded, and she is reminded of the feelings that she had for him. They were arrows to his heart. It is absolutely these subtleties of love that make us understand this. That you have a connection with the one you love, that you know what he's thinking, that you can look across a room and know. I mean, I will say it's a little trickier with a man sometimes, but usually Russ and I, in most situations, we can look at each other and kind of know, okay, yeah, we'll talk about this later, kind of a thing, got it, especially when we're in India or someplace like that, and we're just both, whoa, okay, we better not talk about that right now. But he talks about it's better than wine, this love of theirs. It was something to be savored. We've talked about this terminology before. He said that her love was better than ointments, better than all the spices of the world, something to be sensed. Probably no greater stimulants for passion than wine and perfume, which is what he's talking about here. These were not necessary or needed for the pleasure of their love. You didn't need these things for their love. Your lips, oh my spouse, drip as a honeycomb. Honey and milk were under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. And so he addresses this love that they share. Beyond comprehension was this woman. Her love was so sweet. It could only be compared with the sweetness of a honeycomb. And there is nothing sweeter than that. It's beyond comprehension of anything that could be imagined. She was a really sweet gal. That's who she was. It was a love that satisfied. So you're thinking about Solomon's woo to her and his poem to her, and this is this beloved's poem to her, right? Her love was stimulating. It satisfied. It was like milk and honey that's so rich, it satisfies so deeply when it's coupled with milk. A drink that sustains us from an early age. And what could be better? That's what he's talking about here. Her love was stimulating, like Lebanon, the renowned home of cedar, which yields one of the most fragrant and beautiful forests in the world. Can you imagine walking in those forests and taking a deep breath? You know, love excites all of the senses. And we know that. You know, you ever have chills or your skin crawls or all of those things. It is a wonderful, wonderful expression. And can you imagine walking through those forests, taking that deep breath, that satisfying breath, filling up your senses? And he did. He filled up all of her senses by the whiff of her smell, as if he was walking through the forest of Lebanon. It was passion. And Solomon couldn't steal it from him. He wasn't going to do that. The whole world could be somebody else's, but she needed to be his. When all was said and done, love is not nearly so much a rational experience as an emotional one. When we give ourselves to Christ, it is reasonable and it is logical. We're told that in Romans. But it is emotional. And we cry and we weep, not because the Holy Spirit has zapped us, but because of our understanding of our relationship with the one who loves us so much. And that's what's being discussed here. That is the way we should feel about our relationship with our Savior and the one who we love. A garden enclosed is my sister. Thank you, Lee. My sister, my spouse. Boy. Thank you. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, fragrant henna and spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and the streams from Lebanon. He talks about the correctness and the properness of who she is. He speaks of her as an exotic beauty, like a garden. She's a garden, but she's a garden that's enclosed. She was a garden for him to enjoy, and he alone. This is the first occurrence of garden in the song, but it will reappear 5 more times from this point on. And the garden is indication of several different things. The image of the garden behind its walls with the gate lock suggests that it's unapproachable until it is appropriate. It's unapproachable until it's appropriate. It is an area that belongs to only those who rightfully can go and enter it. It really appears here to speak of virginity. I think that is really, it is a spring shut, a fountain sealed. That is not language that is uncommon at all to the Hebrews. In fact, if you read Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, it is a description of a man and his wife, that he goes back to his own wells and springs. The king obviously would not have understood this. He had many springs, but that is certainly the issue here. And you understand this in India, gardens are few and far between in India, but they are preserved and reserved for rich people and for the kings and there will be wonderful gardens that are behind gates, but the population doesn't come into those gardens. Those gardens are shut up and sealed and enjoyed only by those who are rightfully able to enter them. And that's really what's being noted here. And we've noted that although these young people seem to be have dedicated themselves to each other and they long to be married, there's no question about that. They have never had a sexual intercourse before. It seems that nothing has ever been inappropriate. We've seen that several times. She's already protested it, and that is the hope that they can be together one day. The discussion of marriage is a hope. It's a longing. This couple is looking forward to being together forever because of the love that they have for each other. And so as they approach this consummation of their love, he sees her as this wonderful garden that is guarded and well preserved, but is for the one who can enter. It is the depth of comparison of infidelity to Israel and God, that God also depicts that makes that same analogy and allegory. She was a fountain. She was exuberant in her action, bubbling and overflowing, but one that remained sealed and not enjoyed until the time would come. There was a seal set upon this woman, one of the seals put upon the wells that no outsider could drink from. Proverbs 5:16 uses this imagery, like I said. The Song of Solomon, and then he says, your plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant, inside the garden. There was delight and shade and fragrance and beauty and enjoyment, and it was something to look forward to. For proper marriages and relationships in our world today, for Christian people, the excitement of the marriage day is a wonderful thing. There is a union that is being formed, that the relationship changes on that day. And there is an intimacy that changes on that day. And it is wonderful. And when we are received by our bridegroom and taken into heaven and presented to those before the throne, there is a intimacy. We are there in person then, never to be away from him, never to depart from him. We will always, always be in the presence of the one that we love, our shepherd, your plants, he says in verse 13. Did I pass it? I probably did. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranate with pleasant fruits, fragrant henna with spikenard and saffron. I did read this. And so he discusses her perfection. Darby actually translates, thou shoots are a paradise of pomegranates. Once again, this fruitful pomegranate is being considered. And he talks about that. Your charms are a pomegranate's paradise is one rendering. A fruit known for the symbolism of fruitfulness. It contains a large number of luscious seeds among it in this pinkish color. Inside this garden, of which she was, were the most precious and delicious of all things. That you remember, she's compared him to an apple tree that shades her and provides for her. So we talked about how Eastern monarchs would build these wonderful gardens. They were places of delight and shady, fragrant, and filled with everything that might appeal to the senses of beauty and love and enjoyment. She was certainly a fruitful paradise of enjoyment in contrast with all that the world had to offer. Solomon knew that. He just didn't understand himself. And we can leave the chaos of this world behind and enter into a garden with our Savior, with the sweet communion of God and our Lord. And God will hear, and Jesus understands when we walk in this place that is preserved for this relationship that we have with him. It is a wonderful place to be. And it is a place that these two hoped for. Spikenard and saffron, he speaks next of her amazing fragrance, finding words that are sometimes hard. And in his effort to make her understand what she does to him, he describes her as smells. You ever go on a diet and then have to cook like cupcakes or something? I was constantly on Weight Watchers when my kids were little, but I still had to take cupcakes on their birthdays. And I still was, making things for brownie meetings and Girl Scout meetings and, Little League and all. And so I would stand above the melting pot of chocolate and just smell, just take big whiffs of the chocolate, thinking that, well, maybe if I fill myself with the smells, I won't want, it doesn't work. It's not a diet plan. But you understand how smells fill you with those senses of what it feels like to eat, all wonderful, beautiful smells could be enjoyed as a remembrance of the love and this wonderful thing that they had for each other. And so she talks about this fountain, a fountain of the garden, a well of living water, streams from Lebanon, a fountain, a well, a stream. God speaks of himself that way. In Jeremiah 2, he says, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they have hewn themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. He says they've left my living water to go out to cisterns that have no water in them. Jesus answered the woman at the well and said to her, whoever drinks of this water shall never thirst again. So if any man thirst, let him come to me. Jesus says in John 7, water that sustains us and gives us life is what is being discussed in these passages. She was his life and refreshment as he was hers. Who can dwell in a thirsty land without our living water? That is what this love story is saying. We surely see this in our own lives. What would we do without him? What would we do without the words of life? What would we do without this water? And so the beloved shepherd reminds his love to remember all the things that they know about each other and this relationship they had, that while she's in the palace, remember, come back to me. Christ begs us, he knocks, he calls. Jesus is tenderly calling, come back to me, come back to me. Don't stay in the world. Don't stay in the den of lions. Come back to me. And that's what's being discussed here. Awake, O north wind, she says. I am not going to be able to finish this. Nope, I've got too many pages to go. So I will stop right here. Fair is the garden. That's where we're going to start next week. In verse 15. Okay. So we will end here tonight. Here's our song. Fair are the meadows, fair are still the woodlands, robed in the blooming garb of spring. Jesus is fairer, Jesus is purer, who makes the woeful heart sing. Fair is the sunshine, fair is still the moonlight, and all the twinkling starry host. Jesus shines brighter, he shines purer than all the angels heaven can boast. We sing it. It's the love songs. It's the comparison. It's just a song about what love does for us. And if we love the Lord in the way that we say we do, then it will dictate what we do with ourselves. All right. So I will stop the recording real quick and then we can talk about it. Anybody have any comments or anything you'd like to say? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that you can still see. I mean, I've seen a lot of them. I don't think they wore burqas. No, yeah, I don't think so either. I think they wore veils.